Welcome to the pre-taping of History Tape number 487A. And we're delighted to have you in our viewing audience for It Happened in Grand Prairie. And we bring you the history of Grand Prairie and some of the people that made history in the past and some that are making history this very day. And that is the case today. We're just so pleased to have from a wonderful military group, Colonel Patrick Turner, and he is with the U.S. Army Reserve Headquarters Detachment 4th Brigade, CSS 95th Division. Is that correct?
Absolutely, right here in Great Grand Prairie.
Welcome.
All right, thank you very much for having us, Ms. Jackson.
It's
Appreciate
wonderful.
it. Right.
And we have a special thing that we're going to talk about today.
Okay.
And it is Armed Forces Day 2003.
Mm-hmm.
And there are not a lot of folks that are very, very familiar with that. And we've been celebrating it on our show for about the past 5 years because we found it to be very exciting and almost demanding to be brought to the public. And so we're going to let you, with your permission, look out into your camera with Richard here and tell all of the public that watches our show, which are in the billions, I'm sure.
All right, no doubt.
Yes, on this cable show, our audience may be smaller than on the major stations, but there are people there that are really interested in this subject, and you're going to make them really whet their appetite, please.
I appreciate it, Ruthie. Well, it's a very unique day, Ruthie, in that a lot of people really don't know about Armed Forces Day. And a quick lineage on it from a historical perspective, back in 1949, Secretary Lewis Johnson, who was the Secretary of Defense, he felt that there should be something called an Armed Forces Day. I'm sure the name went over a certain amount of manipulation after in course of time. And in 1950, President Truman passed a law creating Armed Forces Day. And the specific reasons for that was to celebrate the diversity, the coming together, if you will, of all the armed forces over a lot of years. In the past, back in the 30s and the 40s, a lot of the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard had already celebrated their specific day, and as a result, since the Defensive Act of I think it was 1947, the Department of Defense was created, and as a result, all these armed forces all came together, and they were kind of like spread apart.
Under the same umbrella, though.
Under the same umbrella, absolutely. And as a result, back in 1950, they started off, I think the very first one, they just had thousands of parades, hundreds of parades, I should say, maybe around the country. And the purpose of it was to educate the American public insofar as what the American military does. Because obviously a lot of the sons and daughters attend or enlist or become officers in the armed services, and as a result they wanted to, if you will, kind of have a birthday of all the armed services to show what kind of equipment that we have, to show the men and women of the armed forces of how they celebrate their particular how they get along with all the rest of the country, and how we work with the politicians. And as a result, it probably is not as high as you mentioned earlier, maybe from Memorial Day, but still as a result, a lot of people, do celebrate it. I think over in Carswell we talked about, they may be celebrating it over there. And of course, I belong to the 4th Brigade, which is in the 95th Division, which comes out of Oklahoma City. And we don't celebrate it necessarily per se, but obviously, we celebrate the Army birthday and things of that nature.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And they ought to be able to write a perfect dissertation after that, because really, when President Truman made this declaration as the President of the United States, that should have put it on the map that we need to celebrate.
Absolutely.
And I'm so glad that you agreed to come today.
Okay.
And I would like for you to mention Colonel Reggie, who is a very special young man to Grand Prairie, because we were at the changing of the guards, changing of command when he took over. And of course he is from Arlington, which is next door to Grand Prairie, Texas, and he and his wife Carol have been very supportive of the many things in Grand Prairie, Texas. I'd like for you to just mention him while you're here.
Well, Colonel Grant's the commander of our brigade. We train lots of soldiers, both here in Texas and, for that matter, throughout a 9-state area, in anything from fuel pumping to computer operators to truck drivers in Louisiana, all the way up to Iowa too. So Colonel Grant has got some very if you will, massive responsibility. I'm his operations and training officer. I assist him in obviously making sure that all the men and women are trained in the local unit too. So of course, we are the Army Reserves. We're the nation's vanguard, if you will.
Yes.
We're citizen soldiers. That as although we don't necessarily, always go off to war, we must always certainly be prepared.
Be ready.
And part of that is training our nation's young men and women for the particular jobs which they must go forth. And a number of our soldiers even went over recently to Afghanistan and over to Iraq, the people that we trained over there too. So it's a very important function that what the Army Reserves performs here.
The last time I attended the change of command, it was at Navy Dallas.
Yes.
The old base, that
The old
closure,
base.
the old closed Navy Dallas, and that has really changed lately.
The government, Ruthie, has put a strong amount of money into there. I think the official name now is called the Reserve Forces Complex.
Yes,
of course,
it is.
the old name was and I think I met you there when I was going around during Colonel Grant's change of command, but the Marines are there, there's naval personnel, the Texas Army National Guard is there, and we're there, Marines, so there's really a lot there's a very diverse amount of forces. There's drill instructors there, there's a law group there from the Army Reserve too, so there's been a lot of, if you will, money circulating certainly throughout the Grand Prairie area with all the soldiers coming there from all around the state of Texas.
2 weeks ago on a Sunday, the MPs families gathered there at Desert Storm for a big deal of the day, and I got to go and have lunch with them and bring them greetings from the mayor, and it was so wonderful to see those families so fired up and ready for the people to come back home from their assignment.
Yeah, I think that's the 75th Division. Of course, they're part of the U.S. Army Reserves, but I think a lot of those folks got activated several months ago, and I think they're in the process, obviously, of coming back. And it kind of brought if you will, a tear to my eye seeing all those folks. They're just about a block away, so when I see all the dependents and the women and the children and everything else, they really did an outstanding job for their country, and I'm glad you were able to help greet them back.
Yes, that was the families that were there waiting for them, and they have hopes that maybe they will be returning, the MPs will be returning sometime in July, and if so, we want to have a celebration for them in Grand Prairie. It's really wonderful. So Armed Forces Day means more than going to war.
Yes.
Because how long do you have to train to be able to go out in service?
Well, from a reserves perspective, obviously every soldier, boy or girl, goes through basic training, then they have what's called a secondary MOS, or military occupational specialty, and they learn whether it be infantry or quartermaster or supply, and they learn those particular job functions. And as you grow on in your military career, you also learn other particular jobs. You learn alternative jobs. And there's one thing the service does greatly, is that it teaches you to do all kinds of particular jobs. And one of the biggest benefits of being in the reserves is that it has anything from educational benefits, and a lot of those folks that did get deployed or activated, there's certainly their families will be very well taken to as well.
Yes.
And I think we just had a number of new soldiers join our unit here recently, young men who are still juniors in high school here in the area. I think they're going off to basic training, I believe, sometime the first part of June. And when they go into college, if there's certain military bills, if you will, in Congress that pay up to 100% of their tuition. So for those soldiers who potential enlistees, they can also basically get their entire college way paid for all 4 years if they join the reserves too. So
you make a wonderful recruiting officer.
All right, okay. I was at one time.
That is very, very important. That of course they know that in the event that they accept this offer, what comes down the pike must come down the pike. But just think of having your whole education paid for.
There are so many soldiers who join us. I guess if you take a look back, say 30 or 40 years ago, I won't necessarily, they might have been running from something or whatever the case is, but now the soldier of today, male and female, is a much different product than what we saw, say, 30 years ago during the Vietnam War. we find much more motivated youngsters, youngsters who want to get ahead, youngsters who want to understand the importance of a college education, and then maybe do their time 6 or 8 years, then go on into life. They may stay with the reserves, they may not. I got a college degree that the government paid for a few years ago, which I don't want to mention, but it was very important because a lot of the soldiers are taking advantage of all those benefits from an educational perspective.
Mm-hmm. And are you in retirement and do this as a reserve officer?
Well, my retirement's coming up after 28 years in July. It's going to be my last tenure. But one good thing, because I like Colonel Grant, I like his unit very much, I plan to stay active in what they call the family support group, because it isn't just necessarily, Ruthie, the soldiers in that particular unit.
Yeah.
Behind that soldier, there's obviously spouses, there's children, and we have had a person or two activated. And it's very important to the soldier to know that the family is involved in that particular unit.
Yes.
And I know everyone in the unit, and they know me, and I'd like to hopefully mentor. Colonel Grant has asked me to still be involved in the unit, and I'll certainly offer my services, anything that I can do insofar as the unit's concerned.
That's wonderful. Well, now, will you have to meet with them regularly if you do accept this agreement?
Yes, right. My wife's active in what we call the family support group, and usually we have a meeting about every single month during the drill, or maybe every other month depending upon the activities, or we usually have obviously a social function, a couple during the year. I think we had a picnic for about a half of a day last drill. We usually are allowed to have one of those per year, and of course we always have our Christmas event, and then when we have, a change of command or whatever, we'll certainly invite you over to meet and greet some of the soldiers too as well.
Wonderful. I've received an invitation to the Christmas happening, and I was so honored because that's very exciting to be involved, to see firsthand of the things, especially that go on over at the old closed Navy base where I was raised as a kid. Yeah. So that really does.
And they're going to be putting a lot more money into that particular place. They're building, I think it's like a 3 or 4 story barracks area.
I saw that.
So they're really they're fixing up all the buildings around it. It may take a couple years or so, but obviously that's going to be a center, what they call a center of excellence, where a lot of the reservists will be coming from this particular area to the point where they can stay there too, and obviously spend their money in the Grand Prairie area as well too.
I'd like for you to take this moment to look out to your camera and Richard, and invite any of the young people that may be interested in that, and give them a magic telephone number.
Absolutely.
And we need to have others that want to support Armed Forces Day, and the best way to get them in there to support it is to make them one of us, right?
Right, absolutely.
Right. You front and center.
Well, the U.S. Army Reserves is a great way of life. I've spent a lot of my time with it, and now it's time for me, if you will, to handle that mantle over to the youngsters who can have great educational benefits. They meet some lifelong friends. And if you'd be interested in any kind of a career in the Army Reserves, or maybe a 6-year tour or so, I'd ask you to call area 972-343, either 4178 or 4179. There's some full-time people that they could direct you to a local U.S. Army Reserve recruiter and tell them Colonel Turner asked you to call.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you very much for having us.
That is wonderful, and it has just been really splendid, and I know that everyone that watches our show is going to be extremely interested now in Armed Forces Day and all of the things that it means, because we can make it something really special if we'll do for it what we've done for July the 4th and for Memorial Day and the old, what they called Armistice Day.
Yes, that's an old, that's 11 November, I think it is.
Yes,
yes. Okay, great.
That my father was always celebrating because he was in World War I. And I want to thank you so much for being here.
And thank you for your support, Ms. Jackson. We really appreciate it sincerely.
Okay? And my regards to Colonel Grant and all of his family, please.
I'll pass along. You can count on it. Thank you very much.
And we'll be right back with the rest of our show. as we continue our history tape, number 487A, we're just so pleased to help celebrate the Immaculate Conception Catholic Church School. And we have two wonderful, wonderful representatives to help us celebrate today. Father Matt Baggard, we are so pleased to have you with us.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson.
And Father Matt, you are always so inspiring to all of the teachers and all of the kids. They really do love you, because all of the parades that I've been in at your church, I mean, you are really loved and appreciated, and the kids always show that. And Ellie Moser.
Thank you for having us.
Mrs. Bill Moser, we're just so pleased to have you on the set today as a member of the school board.
Right.
And that's very important too. And when you're celebrating the school's 50th anniversary, we have to have at least one member of the school board here, don't we?
That's right.
That's great.
That's right.
All right. First of all, Father Matt, how long have you been at Immaculate?
I've been in Immaculate Conception now for 3 years. Came as a pastor to replace Father Denny O'Mara,
Yes.
who was pastor for 8 years
Yes.
prior to my arrival.
Yes. And you came from?
I came from St. Mark's Catholic Church in Plano.
In Plano.
So,
How about that transition?
The
From a high-class town like Plano into Grand Prairie.
well, don't tell the folks in Plano, but I think Grand Prairie is just as high class, if not more high class. It was really a different community,
Yes.
but the community ties in Grand Prairie, and especially in Immaculate Conception, is much stronger. We have, for example, parents sending kids to our school who themselves went to our school.
Isn't that wonderful?
And so second and third generation families at Immaculate Conception, and I think that's indicative of the community of Grand Prairie. Much stronger ties in Grand Prairie, and a very loving and affirming community. So the transition was really very easy for me. Coming in as a new pastor, especially, to step into such an affirming community was wonderful experience.
I know that one of my very good friends that is an attorney in Grand Prairie was one of the first boys and girls that went to your school back in about 1952, and still has wonderful things to say about that school. And of course, neither one of you all were here in 1952, as were many of us that are of ancient vintage. And but what do you think about the celebration? What are y'all doing to celebrate?
Well, there's a number of activities we've had throughout the year. Just some good get-togethers, some wonderful opportunities for the community to come together and celebrate our history. We do have our major fundraiser coming up actually this Saturday, May 17th, which is one of the many events that we're having throughout the year to continue to celebrate our 50 years. And in fact, the theme for this fundraiser is the 50s style with food and dancing and some other
So if you want to come and wear your poodle skirt, you can.
All poodle skirts are in right here on Northeast 17th Street and in Grand Prairie, Texas. That is just really wonderful. Now, I know that, do either of you know who was the first principal of
It's one
Immaculate?
of the Benedictine sisters, I believe.
Yeah.
I don't know her name.
I'm embarrassed to say I don't know her name, but there were the Benedictine sisters that first came to serve.
And began the school.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And don't you know that the people in Grand Prairie, Texas were apprehensive and thought, well, I just hope that this school will continue. And now you have just blossomed. You've won all sorts of awards at that school. I know that outstanding awards, and you have now how many teachers and how many?
Probably about 30 teachers?
We have about 30 teachers. We have a little over 300 students.
Yeah.
Which gives some challenge in its own way. The buildings are about 50 years old now, and so we're going to be looking towards the future now and meeting some very basic facility needs and making it possible for us not only to maintain that number but also to expand. We're looking to grow a little bit more. We'd like to grow to have about 400 students at some time in the future. But just a wonderful staff that makes that possible, with about 30 students and a principal and a vice principal.
And you have a new addition to the southern portion of your property there. You have the new wellness center.
That's right.
That is bringing you all much, much notoriety. And that's good notoriety. Isn't that wonderful?
We like that.
People all over town are so thankful for that end of the portion of Grand Prairie, Texas, that geographic section, that the Wellness Center is doing well. And we have had them on the show. We've missed having you all on the show quite as often as we would like, but we've had them on. And Mr. Richard Frigo, his honor on the council, is, I believe, the president of that group, and he really does get out and beat the drum for that, and it was something that was so badly needed in the area. But the school is what we're interested in, and can you tell me what year that wonderful award that you had, that you were one of the outstanding exemplary schools? Was
1986, we won the Blue Ribbon Award for Education.
Is that 86?
Yes.
1986. I remembered that, but I didn't document the date, and I thought that was really outstanding. Do you ever hope to attain that again, Ms. Board Member?
I think we may try in the next few years to start that process again. It's a long process, it's very involved, but it's definitely worth going through, because that's a tremendous honor to achieve for the school.
Yes. And Mrs. Ellie, when were you elected to the school board for the first time?
For the first time? Gee, I was appointed for the first time in 1994.
1984?
94.
1994.
And I was on until about 96, and then I went off for a little while, and then I came back on, and I've been on and off and back on. Well, we've actually changed to an advisory council per the Dallas Diocese, so I think I've been on about 2 years now.
The second year.
I was appointed.
And tell me about the school, and starting with Peter, all of the experiences that
Moser
you've had
children.
working with the skill, all of the Moser children, except
How much time do we have?
except Mary Elizabeth.
She's in school in
Is she in
pre-K 3. She's in
she
pre-K 3.
shouldn't be in school. Oh
She's growing. She's really big. She's almost 4.
She's almost 4.
Yeah.
Tell me about why you chose the school, and how exciting it's been to be a board member.
Well, we chose the school. We lived in Grand Prairie. We were actually going to Holy Family in Irving, and we were looking for a school for our kids when they started school, when Peter started school in '92, and we really, really liked the school. We liked the solid Catholic foundation that they were going to get there. We liked the community atmosphere of the parish and the school. And we've been through a lot at the school, a lot of tremendous things, some difficult times.
Ups and downs.
Sure, but everybody does. And now, you know, we've had, Peter's graduated from Immaculate Conception. Our second son, Thomas, will be graduating next week from
Will
Immaculate
Thomas
Conception.
be graduating?
I hope so.
You're looking forward to that.
Yes, he will. Yes, and then we have 3 more that'll be going through and finishing.
And you would name them all so that we would have them all on this tape?
Sure. Peter is 16, Thomas is almost 14, Patrick's 12, David is 9.5, and Mary Elizabeth's almost 4.
Okay, and what's exciting, almost all of them are Scouts except Mary Elizabeth, right?
Well, she's not old enough to be a Girl Scout yet. She will never be a Boy Scout, but yeah, all the boys are Scouts.
And I was very impressed about this last weekend when all 4 of them brought the colors at the Ruthie Jackson Center in Grand Prairie, Texas, and did a remarkable job. And of course, Father was there with his buttons all popping off because he was so pleased
with
with
very proud of them. We both are.
The presentation. It was really great. And do they get a lot of that at school as well as in Scouts?
Oh, definitely. They get tremendous, well, the religious education at Immaculate Conception is really wonderful. It's emphasized throughout every school day, and it's a part of every class, really. And that's what makes it important to us, that our faith and our values of our faith are instilled in our children. So.
7 years ago, you had a principal that came to you, and she's leaving, and she is one of my mentors. She is such a wonderful, you've got to talk about Sister Mary Patrice Murray.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, Sister Mary Patrice Murray arrived at the school 7 years ago, a daughter of charity, one of the orders of Catholic sisters, and really did a tremendous job of advancing the Catholic identity of Immaculate Conception School.
Yes.
But even beyond that, just helping the school to grow even more in its sense of family and its sense of mission of educating the whole child, and really did a good job in reaching out to the broader Grand Prairie community. I know that you have served us well as an honorary member of the school board in the past, and working with different civic groups. She has really served us well, and is moving on now to hopefully serve other Catholic schools and help them to grow too. So we really thank her for her wonderful years of service, and wish her the best of luck and God's blessings as she moves on.
Mm-hmm. Our loss and their blessing, isn't it amazing how it balances out when, and surely the good Lord is going to send you someone so exciting, because Grand Prairie needs it, and the Lord knows that. So that is really great, and she has been just a real inspiration. She is a PR person that uses very unusual tactics. She draws in even the maimed and the halt and those of us that are that probably wouldn't be considered under any other circumstance. And I felt that her being in Grand Prairie, Texas, has brought a great quality of life, not only to the Immaculate Conception Catholic Church and School, but to the neighborhood especially, and to all of the people that she reinforces, because some of them will be, she is never negative that I've ever seen. Now there may be a little hint of it somewhere in her presentation, but she's always gung-ho and let's go for it.
She really exemplifies Christian service.
She does.
She really does.
She's so dedicated to education and to our school.
Well, Father Matt, we're proud of you, and we hope that they won't transfer you away to someplace that the kids would cry a lot if that ever happened. And Ellie, I'd like for you to look out into your camera number 2 at Richard and invite everyone to come to this celebration, because we need the money to keep things going and keep the school going, and you're on front and center for that, for history.
On Saturday, May 17th, we have our biggest fundraiser of the year at the school. It's at the Family Life Center. It's our Vegas night. It's a 50s theme, so if you want to come in 50s dress, please come. It is $25 per person in advance, $30 at the door. We have casino, we have dinner, silent auction, live auction. We're going to have a great time, so please come. If you want to call the school for tickets, it's 972-264-8777.
And the address at the school on Northeast 17th is?
400 Northeast 17th Street.
400 Northeast 17th in Grand Prairie, Texas, right off of Small and right off of 180. You can't miss it.
That's right.
And you call Ruthie Jackson if you need the other directions, 972-264-2234. We'll get back with you. And I want to thank y'all so much for being here to document the history. And is anyone writing a bona fide history of the school for this 50 years? I need a copy in the library. Y'all go home and let's get with it.
You got it.
And get a history copy. Thank y'all for being here.
Thanks for having us.
And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.